Hi guys, and welcome to episode 7 of the Stoic Performance podcast. My name's Matty Green, and on today's show we've got Martin Stapes Stapleton. He is a former Royal Marine and now a professional MMA fighter. He's also a coach as well, coaches MMA down in Rochdale. We spoke at length about his time in the Marines. He's got a lot of experience on operations. He went to Northern Ireland. The invasion of Iraq, he went to Iraq again for a second time, and then out to Afghanistan as well. We then kind of get into how he got into MMA and how he kind of progressed throughout his career within MMA. And we could have gone on for a lot longer, I guarantee you that. So I hope you enjoy that. If you like the content, feel free to subscribe to the channel and enjoy. Mate, first of all, thank you for coming on. Thank you for giving me some time.
Mate, yeah.
I wanted to get you on because I think you've led a very interesting life. From what I've seen, you've been in the Corps, but you've also gone on to become, an elite level MMA fighter. You've won championships, world championships, and now you're kind of transitioning, still fighting, but starting to transition into coaching as well, which obviously I see quite a lot of on social media. We have a mutual friend in Michael Wheatman, and I know he's been recently as well. So I want to get into all that kind of later on, but first up, kind of go back to the beginning of when and why you wanted to join the Corps, if you will.
So joining the Corps for me, mate. By the way, thank you for that intro there, mate. A little bit knocking my socks off there, but joining the Corps for me, it was kind of, I wasn't one of them guys that were always wanted to join the Corps as a you meet blokes in the Corps that always wanted to join from the minute they were 10 years old or whatever.
Yeah,
it was never like that for me. It was more the fact that all throughout school I had absolutely no interest whatsoever in schoolwork, and then as you get year 10, year 11, you're getting towards your GCSEs and stuff, that they're trying to motivate you, telling you about all these jobs you'll be able to get if you do this subject and that subject, and you'll be able to do this job and that job. And I was looking at all them jobs and thinking, that sounds like hell to me. Even at that young of an age, sitting in an office or doing a 9 to 5, it just sounded like hell. I just thought, there's no way I'm spending the rest of my life doing that shit. So I never really paid any interest in school. I didn't do one piece of homework the whole time I was at school. Not one. I didn't even take a school bag most days. I'd just turn up to class. I always felt that I wanted to do something different with my life, just something, nothing special, just something different, something where I had a bit more control over what I do and a bit more adventure in it. And people think joining the military, you don't have control over what you do, as in they think it's all, you're getting orders backed at you and stuff. But I just had a totally different opinion of it. I just thought that it was a place where you've got a lot of control over your life, in the fact that you get to volunteer to go on adventures all the time with your mates. So that's what endeared me to it. And then one of my best friends, Matty Williams, he as we were leaving school, I was starting to get keen on maybe joining the army or something. And Matty was like, nah, you can't join the army. Look at these guys. And he showed me some recruiting videos of the Royal Marines. And he was like, this is the army on steroids. And I was like, yeah, I'm joining that shit. So that's what it was, yeah.
So were you straight out of school?
About a year later.
Yeah.
But 17, yeah.
Yeah, same for me. I had the same kind of, I never did any cadets, never did anything like that. It wasn't until my cousin was he's pretty much my brother, do you know what I mean? We're that close, and he's a year above me, so he was kind of coming towards the end of his school and finding out about stuff like this before I even knew what it was. And he said, yeah, I'm going to join the Marines. And I was like, right, well, I will too then. And then that was it. We went down, did our PRMC together, both passed that. And then, funny thing, he ended up we had to carry his mum's outdoor garden swings, these kind of big wooden swings. They'd moved house. they'd moved house and we had to carry it. Like, it was only probably about a mile, but he ended up getting a double hernia from it. And he never joined the corps after it. Never.
No way.
He got a double hernia. So, like, we both had our start date for the same day, 2002, and I ended up going down alone, and he never kind of made it. He never joined up.
It's pretty crazy you should say that. You don't know a guy called Wayne Shaler, do you? You never met Wayne Shaler? Wayne Shaler, he's a driver. He's in the drivers branch. He's South Major now.
No,
well, me and him were like best friends growing up. We lived about 500 metres from each other's houses. We were together all the time. We got our birthday on the same day. Birthday's the same day, for God's sake.
Right.
We applied at the same time. We end up on the same PRMC together. Past that, end up in the same recruit troop, 797 troop. Both passed out together, and then both went to 4-2 Commando together as our first draft. So it was very cool for me to have like such a close friend with me on the course as well. Is because, you know, we were from quite a rough and ready background from Rochdale, you know, and when you get down there, especially as a young lad, you kind of, it's a little bit of an ego thing. You know, when you get down to Royal Marines basic training, there's 60 other young lads your kind of age from different towns, different backgrounds, and everyone's trying to prove that they're the bollocks or whatever. And it was just good to have a friend with me who was from the same background as me. We kind of bounced off each other a little bit and give each other confidence. So, you know, it's good.
That's class. I mean, I was worried because I didn't have that. I was meant to have that. Like, he was like, you know, someone I looked up to, almost like a bigger brother for me. And then that kind of got taken away, and I was like, shit, what's this going to be like? I did have hair back then, and then they shaved it off when I got down. Funny old thing. And I was just like, what the fuck's going on? But the lad who was in my bed space next to me, he ended up becoming my Bezzy Oppo, and like kind of still is to this day.
Yeah, it goes like that sometimes, right?
Yeah, mental, absolutely crazy. So obviously you passed out of training. I was in training when the invasion happened. I remember walking down into the galley, and it was on the TV, on the news screens on the TV in the galley. So you
passed... What, as in is that what you mean when we actually went into Iraq?
Yes, yeah.
So
the training team, they were threaders because they wanted to be.
Mate. Yeah.
But obviously, so you were a part of that invasion. Were you with 4-2?
Yeah, I was in M Company at the time, yeah.
Right, so as a young Marine, how was that?
Fucking exciting, man. It was just the adventure of a lifetime, weren't it? I mean, I just joined up, and you know what it's like when you're joining up, you read all the glossy magazines and you see all the promotional videos they send you, and it's all war fighting stuff, and that's what you join up for, right? You know, you're hyped for that sort of stuff. That's exactly why you join up. But then when you do join up, you start thinking, well, when's the last war? When's the next war? There's probably never going to be a war, or I might get a peacekeeping duties or whatever. And then when that came up, it was like, whoa, you know, we've only just joined and this is the real thing. But it was, for me, I loved it, man. At that point in my life. Now, when I say stuff like that, what I want people to realise is that I don't mean it in like a political sense or a warmongering sense or anything like that. Obviously, war's not good for anybody. But as a young Marine, having the opportunity to go out there with all my mates, doing the job that I've trained to do, and let's be honest, with a lot of ego on my shoulders, because that's what you have. You train and you're told that you're the best of the best and this, that, and the other. And you want to prove that you're the best of the best, and you want to get your hands dirty. For me, it was the adventure of a lifetime. I genuinely think that Optelic won the first invasion of Iraq. Without that, I don't know if I'd be the same person I am today. I think that like year period of my life is something that I think about all the time. I have memories from it all the time, lessons that I learned all the time. I don't think I'd be the same person without that.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I joined 40 when the lads. I was on rear party actually, while the lads were on leave from Telic 1.
Right.
So then I joined Delta Company when they all came back, and obviously these, like, I was still 17 at the time, and these lads had come
Yeah,
back from war, and I was just like, tell you,
yeah.
the very first night they rocked up, they came back from leave. I remember I was in my four-man pit, in four-man grot. I was in my pit, and I could hear them all coming in, you know, and like shouting, and just they're all absolutely tanked up. And
Bullshit.
I was like, what's going on here? And this South African lad came into the grot naked, fully naked. And I'm
Obviously.
like, I'm in the corner and I'm like looking at him, and he's got these two mugs. So he's got like two of these mugs, and he looks at me and he just lets out this scream like, ah, and then smashes both cups on his head, and then he walks out the grot. And I was like, what have I just joined? What is going on?
Quality.
But
that's the culture. And it should be the culture. You know that.
Yeah.
For an elite fighting force like the Royal Marines, it shouldn't be PC, and it shouldn't be for everybody. It should be a group of elite men that act like alpha males, that are still, they're still humble, and they've got humility and all them the commando spirit, and embodying all them things about trying to help people. But at the same time, you're being asked to do tasks that are way outside of the normal boundaries of life. So you should be a person that's able to live outside them boundaries of life. Do you get what I mean?
It's been able to flick that switch from one to the other.
Yeah.
Seamlessly as well.
Seamlessly, yeah.
So that was the start.
I do think they've got better at that nowadays, with like decompression training they do with lads and stuff. Asking lads to come back from a war zone, and like you say, when it was Iraq, Telic 1, Telic 4, you were on Telic 4 as well.
Yeah.
Right. I was on that with 40 Commando as well. Coming back from them sort of trips, and then just because one minute you're living your life on a knife edge, and like every second of your life, I try and explain this to people. It's like every decision you make matters at that point, even like down to if you're going to have a little sip of water out of your black bomber, because you're on patrol, and you take a knee and you go down in a position, and your choice whether you make a little drink of water or not means something, because if you don't take that drink of water, you might not get a chance for another couple of hours, and you might go down. Yeah. But if you do take that drink of water, you might have to take your eyes off your axe for a minute while you're taking it. Mm-hmm. So every little second, even though they're microseconds and micro decisions, they're so important. Yeah. And then you come home and you've gone from all that pressure, all that important decision making, constantly, you're on edge non-stop. You come home and they just go, good effort, lads, you've got 3 months off. And then you go to 3 months where nothing matters, because you've got loads of money in the bank that you've saved up. You're not working, you're not on ops. You're just on leave, and your decisions making, or the decisions that you make daily, they just don't have the same kind of ramifications. And I think it's hard for people to transition from that war zone to back to normal, normal day-to-day living in the UK. But I do think they've got a lot better at that now with the decompression stuff they do from Afghanistan and stuff like that. We've learned that. I think the British military from like 2003 to 2015, it improved so much on everything, from tactics, techniques and procedures, from equipment all the way up to stuff like decompression.
Yeah, definitely, because the equipment thing was a massive issue, wasn't it? Like, it made national news constantly.
Telic 1, there's a video, it's on my Instagram, of me on the top of someone firing a 50 cal, and I've actually got a box of the ammo in my garage now. Not the ammo, by the way, so I don't want the police coming knocking it. It's the ammo box, right? It's the box, not the ammo.
Yeah.
But in the 50 cal pamphlet, it actually said, word for word, you cannot use Belgian ammunition with this machine gun. It doesn't work. It's not high enough grade quality and all that. Guess what ammo they gave us in Iraq? Belgian ammunition, mate. And we're like, this is some sort of joke. But I think the problem was with the equipment is you've got to think about it. Before Telic 1, it was the Falklands was the last time we had a real sustained campaign of war. Yeah. And even that was a short campaign. It was very, very intense, but it was very short compared to, so the equipment failings and stuff that we had back in them days didn't really show through until Telic 1 again in Iraq. And I think that's when the military, like, headsheads got a grip of it and were like, we need to sort the lads out because they're dangling. You know?
Yeah. I think they've got to a point where they realise that we need to constantly adapt and evolve. Like we're asking the lads to do on the ground, we need to do that and make sure they're prepped and ready. And
resource. You need resource to do, you know, to carry out tasks. It's not just about personnel and skills, it's also about resource.
How did you find the difference in tours between Telic 1 and Telic 4? Obviously, the two were completely different in scope of, you know, operation, but you were, you know, a lot wiser, you know, even though 1 year older, maybe, 18 months, if that? You'd through Telic 1, you'd gone through an invasion, you've, you know, gone from a young lad, probably still a teenager, maybe early 20s, seeing so much stuff through Telic 1, and now you're kind of like, you know, almost a little bit of a sweat almost for the lads.
Before Telic 1, I actually did Northern Ireland with 4-2. I did the tour across McGlen, so it was pretty cool because I went from a peacekeeping tour in Northern Ireland, then to the first invasion of any country that the British military have done in decades, and then to the peacekeeping tour afterwards. So I did feel, like you said, I had a bit of experience under my belt, and there was obviously young Marines coming through that were in our troop and our section and stuff, and I felt like I had something that I could, you know, a bit of value that I could add to them, and a little tiny bit of leadership skills or a little bit of leadership knowledge, should I say. The difference between them two tours, particularly, Telic 1 was unknown. There was nobody knew what was going to happen. Like, for instance, when we flew out there, we still didn't know what was going to happen. We flew out to Kuwait, and nobody had a clue if was there going to be a war, was there not? Was this just a show of force? Was it not? And we got there, and there was nothing there in the desert. We were just dropped in the desert, and it was like, right, lads, build some tents. And we're like, out of what? And then they were like, oh, God knows what. Yeah, so like they started having stuff airdropped into us, like boards and stuff. And we started putting tents up, and then it was like, who's feeding us? And there was no food. So for like 3 weeks, we were on not a full MRE, not one full MRE, just one MRE meal between two for your dinner, and a boiled egg each for your breakfast. And that was all you were getting. And that was for like 3 weeks. Lads were, when I say starving, the lads were actually starving. Unreal. You're talking maybe 600 calories a day in the middle of a desert when you're probably burning 3,000. And then it started to build up, obviously. They started to issue us desert kit, and we were like, oh shit, we're actually going in now. And then they started issuing ammo, and then they started building firing ranges at the camp in Kuwait while we were waiting. And this happened over like maybe a 6-week period. It went from middle of the desert with nothing, not even any food, to 6 weeks later, we've got ranges up, we're doing section attacks, we're doing actual, you know, walk-through, talk-throughs of what we're going to do, and loads of tactical training. And then, obviously, the invasion was insane because, like, the night before, we were all laid out in our sticks, ready to fly in, and still nobody knew what was going to happen. Was it going to be massive? Was it going to be a big kickoff? Was it going to be resistance on the way in? There was no one knew anything. But obviously, when we came back from that and went to Telic 4, I think they had much more of a grip of things, what was going on. It was considered more of a peacekeeping op, although there was still quite a lot of danger. There was a lot of danger out there in that time, wasn't there? You know, especially in places like Alamara and places like that. I think the other thing that was a big difference between the two tours was the living standards, as in, like, on Telic 1, it was literally rations, sleeping in a shell scrape under your poncho, and you're either on sentry or you're on ops, you know. But at least on Telic 4, we got to stay at Basra Palace, or was it Shiba Log? Yeah, I think I stayed at Shiba Log Base for a bit, stayed at Basra Palace for a bit. You actually had some form of accommodation. It wasn't comfortable by any means, but you had some form of accommodation. When you weren't on ops, you had some form of like a galley to go and have a proper, normal meal in. You had satellite phones so you could ring home and stuff. So it was a big difference in like the living standards. And it did give you a tiny bit of normality as far as living with 600 Marines can be normal. You know?
Yeah. No, definitely. That tour for me was my first one, and managed to get, going back to what you say, not glorifying it, but doing my job of getting some rounds down.
Yeah.
In Baghdad.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
En route Irish. Wasn't many rounds, but it was enough. It was
Yeah.
a bit of a contact, but that's the only kind of thing I had, which was really kinetic. The rest obviously was just the kind of peacekeeping type stuff we did. But the difference from that to Afghanistan was unbelievable.
Night and day. Yeah, night and day again. That is totally the intensity of Afghanistan just totally unmatched. I mean, there was times in Iraq, like during the Shia uprising, but we weren't particularly involved in it. I think it was the Black Watch and stuff like that. They had pretty rough time out there, and they were involved in a lot of contacts out there. But still, the intensity of the contacts and the threat of IEDs and the ingenuity of the IEDs that came out in Afghanistan, the intensity was just a different level from anything the British military had encountered before, I think.
Yeah.
Hey, thank God that we had Iraq as a little bit of a stepping stone to let us know we need to get our shit together here, because I think without Talik 1 and Talik 4, the ops that came during the Iraq tours, I think without them we'd have been in a lot more trouble in Afghanistan.
Yeah, you're definitely right. I did Herrick 9 with 4-2 Lima Company. What you went after? Did you go after that? Did you go to one tour or two of Afghan?
One tour one tour. I think I don't know what Herrick it was, to be honest. I wasn't on a Herrick. I was with SFSG at the time, so it had a different name. I think it would have been about the time of. It might have been Herrick 10 or 11 sort of time.
I was in Lehman Company. I spoke about this the other day on the podcast when I got back from. We got back from Ghana's, and then they kind of like just changed everything. And I'd gone from being in Lima Company to they put me into J Company, and just swapped me for the same billet. Like I was a PW, they swapped me for the same thing, and I was like, what's the point in this? And then we started gearing up for, might have been Herrick 12 or 14, I can't remember which one it was. The next we started gearing up for, and then it was like, right, you're off to CTC. See you later. And I was just like, oh, threaders. But the tour. What kind of stuff were you doing in Afghan?
So the stuff that we did out there was like, in comparison to like the lads who were working. So the lads who were working in FOBs, obviously, you must have been working out of FOBs.
We were lucky as Lima Company. We did strike ops, so we would go in, land on, and then get out.
Well, very similar then. So obviously the lads that are working in, for those that are listening that don't know, the lads that are working in FOBs called forward operating bases, they have one area and they patrol that area constantly, and they're trying to like get the enemy out of that area, secure the local population and stuff like that. Very, very, I think for me, that was the most dangerous job in Afghanistan. The lads working out of FOBs, they had it bad because
100%. Mm-hmm.
Every single day they're getting up and they're patrolling the same areas. They've got the enemy watching them 24/7. Every footstep they take, the enemy's watching them, trying to work out how they can kill them, where they can put IEDs, how they can ambush them, stuff like that. And for them lads, it's not a very glamorous job either, because they were literally fighting for their lives every single day, weren't they?
Yeah.
And some of it might not have been that exciting for them, because a lot of the time they wouldn't have been able to see the enemy, and a lot of the time the enemy was an IED buried under the ground. So that for me, they had the hardest tours out of everyone. I didn't do a FOB tour with SFSG. It was a tour where more like what you were saying, more like a strike ops tour, where we were just different areas all the time, all over Helmand province, going into areas for like maybe 3 or 4 days at a time, or maybe 24 hours, depending on what sort of resistance we were meeting there. And then sometimes we'd pull out and go back to the camp for a couple of days, resort our kit and go back out. Other times we'd stay out in the desert for like a month at a time. and it was brilliant because we'd be staying out in the middle of the desert, then we'd go on to do a strike op for a couple of days, then we'd come back out and we'd set up an LUP in the desert for a few more days, then we'd go back out, and it felt like what a proper commando war should be, you know, for Royal Marine Commandos. That's what it should be, you know, go out there, do your bit, go back, hide in the desert, sneaky beaky, no one can see you, go back out, do another op, sneaky beak. And again, because of the unit I was in, the equipment we had and the assets we had, I before I joined that unit and I was like exposed to them assets and that sort of equipment, I'd never seen them sort of assets. I didn't know the British military were using the sort of assets we were allowed to use, and I didn't realise that sort of that level of equipment was so readily available. And it was a big eye opener for me, and it was a very, very good experience. I felt very fortunate to be on that tour.
Yeah, I agree. My tour sounds pretty much exactly the same. That's exactly what we were doing. Like you say, going out, coming back in again. And that's what I felt was definitely the pinnacle of my career. I did 10 years, and that was definitely the pinnacle. But coming back, and I spoke to someone the other day about transitioning from being, you know, being a soldier, being that complete, you know, doing those tasks, to then having to come back and then play at soldiers. For me, I really struggled with it. I just couldn't adapt.
Well, so for me, I felt like, and you might know what I'm saying is, like, I felt like I'd done that with Iraq, and so I went, when I first joined, I had Northern Ireland, then I had Iraq, then I had Iraq again, then I had Norway, and even in Norway, you're actually out doing, even though it's not an operation, you're out in the Arctic, you're doing Arctic warfare. If you don't square your shit away, you'll probably freeze to death at night, you know what I mean? Mm. So even in them situations, I felt like I was actually soldiering for about the first 4 years of my career, 5 years. I felt like I was non-stop, you know, soldiering. And then obviously when that kind of came to a close and I went back to 40 commandos, started going on normal exercises on Dartmoor, and like you say, you start feeling like you're playing soldier again. I was like, fucking hell, listen, for me, not because it was bad, it was just because when you're comparing it to what you've already done. And then when I went to Afghanistan, and it was just a whole other level of intensity and level of professionalism and stuff. Coming back from there and then going back to, like you say, playing soldier. So because I was at SFSG, we were still doing taskings that were very exciting. We were doing a lot of exciting stuff, and you know there was always that buzz about the unit. So this is coming up, that's coming up. You know, it was still exciting, but still, it did feel like you were playing soldiers a bit. And Afghanistan was closing down and stuff. And that, for me, that was the time where I thought, like, right, I've done everything I joined to do. In fact, I've done more than I joined to do. I've got every experience that I wanted. And that was when it was time to close the curtains.
That was so. At what point? Because you were your PTI, weren't you?
Yeah.
So at what point did you go and do your PTI course? I think actually I've seen pictures. Were you on with Greg Andrews? With Greg?
Yeah, me, Greg and Lordy, yeah.
Yeah, so I was in Delta Company with Greg when he first joined. Cracking
bloke. What a bloke.
Yeah. So where does it all tie in with MMA? Kind of getting on, going through. What point did you kind of pick MMA up and start? Because you turned pro in 2007, was it, or something?
2007, yeah.
So at what point did you kind of because really back then it was still relatively new, wasn't it, MMA? I remember watching MMA from probably the early 2000s. I started watching it, but I didn't know anywhere to do it. I boxed originally. Where did you kind of get into MMA? At what point?
Well, I actually got into it in the call with, do you know Si Stroud? Stroudy?
And yeah, I know of him, yeah.
He's a DL now. Honking bit of shit.
Is he
top bloke.
With Kev Donnelly?
Yeah. So me and him actually, it was him that introduced it to me. He had some DVDs of UFC 1, and we were on a ship. I think we were on Galahad, and we were either coming back from Senegal or Norway. Or I can't even remember where we were coming back from. I just remember that we were on a long trip back from back from abroad on a ship for weeks on end, and me and him just started drilling. We were watching the UFC 1 DVDs, UFC 2. We just started drilling underneath the flight deck where the gym was on it. Did you ever go on Galahad?
No.
Mate, the gym was a shake on, like a box container. It was literally like maybe 10 foot, 8 foot wide by about 20 foot long, and that was the gym. And obviously, being a steel container, it stinks. All the sweat's trapped in there. And we set up a couple of mats in there. We just used to drill and do a bit of rolling. And it's funny you should ask this question after the last question, because I think that was one of the things that really drove me into MMA, was the fact that we'd done Northern Ireland, Iraq again, Senegal, Norway, all that real-time stuff where you feel like you're actually living the life. And then we were on the way back. I started to learn MMA, and that's when all the exercise at 40 Commando started, doing Boston, all these crap exercises.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, well, I'm not really. I know. I understand. Everyone's got to keep their skills up, and we've got to keep the soldiering level going and all that. But it didn't feel real for me anymore, because I'd already done real. I knew what real was, and I knew what real wasn't. Mm-hmm. So getting into MMA gave me another slice of reality, because MMA is, obviously there's still rules and stuff and all that, and it's very safe compared to combat situation in Afghanistan or something. But it is still a real contest. You are really fighting, and there's a real chance that you're going to get destroyed or strangled.
Yeah.
So I think it gave me that slice of reality that I felt like I'd lost after coming back from the tours.
And you obviously turned pro whilst you was in the Corps.
Yeah.
How did that kind of come about? Did you get any time off to kind of do it, or was it all off your own back? And
officially or unofficially?
Let's go both.
Right. So unofficially, when I first turned pro and I started fighting, officially, should I say, I kept it as quiet as I could at the time. Obviously, all the lads knew, but I didn't want any of the hierarchy to know, because it wasn't. All I'd heard of lads was, if the hierarchy find out you're doing that, they'll tell you to stop. If you get injured and you can't come on exercise and blah blah blah. So I kept it pretty quiet on that side of things. And then when I joined the PT staff, I passed my PTI course, I joined the PT staff. I got the opportunity to go on the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
And obviously that was massive for me personally, and I needed to. Well, it was, you go and living in Las Vegas for 12 weeks, so you have to go through the official routes, So I went through the official routes, and there was a director of training at the time. I think he must have been like a lieutenant colonel or something. I won't say his name, but he wasn't very well liked, and he was like putting a stop to it. No, you're not doing this. You're not doing that. It's not a recognised core sport. You cannot. You blah blah blah. But then my sergeant major at the time got involved, and he was like, "Fucking hell, shave off. This is one of our blokes. We're fighting men, and this is one of our blokes travelling the world to fight and represent the Royal Marines. He's fucking doing it." And he, between the sergeant major, and then I had the officer in charge of the PTIs was a guy called Sean Lurwell as well. And them two were just like, and he was a hoofing bloke. He was like a captain at the time. And they put their careers at risk for me, because they were like, listen, just fucking go. We'll cover your tracks. And while you're there, we'll fight your case. But once you're gone, you're gone. And so what if they find out? We'll get a bollocking when you get back. So what? So I just went. And then luckily for me was that them two fought my case so well that, oh God, I can't remember his name now. One of the other colonels got involved. Huge bloke. I can't remember his name's not come. I actually met him recently at a pass-out parade about a year ago. Hoofing bloke. Sorry, sir, if I can't find you, I can't recall your name, but he got involved then, and he was like, this lad, he had the same thing. He's like, this lad's going fighting, and he's a Marine. That's what we do. Let's let him do it. And then I had the top cover then, so it was good then,
That's awesome. You touched on saying obviously MMA is not a recognised core sport. Do you think it could ever be?
It's a hard question, that, and I like to look at these things from both angles, right? So the pro MMA fighter in me, who loves MMA and coaches MMA and wants this sport to grow and all that, says, yes, it should be, and I want it to be. Let's do it. Let's have Royal Marines training MMA and progressing and blah, blah, blah. The bootneck in me says, no, I like the way that I did it, and I like the way that, because I found that the way I did it, I had to adapt and be a bit, being a bit ingenuity about it, a bit of sneaky beaky about it and all that. Because, and I still believe this, when you're a Royal Marine, you should be a Royal Marine first and foremost. We see all these other regiments in the military where like they join the football team when they get 3 years off to play football.
Yeah.
And as bootnecks, we look down on them. We're like fucking part-time soldier. What's up with you? Do you know what I mean? We're bootnecks. We're Royal Marines. We're soldiers. Anything else is just a pastime. And we look down on them guys that do that. And rightly so, mate, because I do think that that's one of the things that makes the Royal Marines so good, is that we are full-time soldiers, and that is our backbone relies upon that, and everything we do in our pastime is upon us. So I'm kind of laid in the middle on it. I think what they've done with the Royal Marines BJJ is absolutely phenomenal, because BJJ is something that lads can be training every single. MMA and BJJ are two different things, To be a pro MMA fighter or even an amateur MMA fighter these days, you've got to be committed like it's a full-time job. You can't be an amateur MMA fighter these days if you're going to train twice a week, 3 times a week. Yeah. I've got amateurs that are training 3 times a day, and they're training like pros, and that's what it takes to be an MMA fighter. I don't think bootnecks or Royal Marines are going to have, most of them are going to have that time to commit to that while still being a soldier. But BJJ is a different thing. For one, you're not going to get injured the same as you would in MMA. Training MMA properly takes a hell of a lot out of your body, all the bangs and the knocks you get. BJJ, while it still does take a lot out of your body, and it's still obviously the physical fitness of it and the physical conditioning you get out of it is second to none, you don't pick up the same knocks and injuries that you do in MMA. So I think that is a more kind of specific thing for the military or for Royal Marines rather than MMA. Also, I think that BJJ, so MMA is a sport at the end of the day, and when you're training MMA, like it or lump it, you have to train in a way that takes the rules into consideration. So strategically and tactically, and you know what the rules are, and you have to play to the rules in certain aspects. In BJJ, you've got kind of 2 degrees. You've got the guys who focus on sport BJJ and they like to play funny guards and all that, and that's cool, that's good. But you've also got BJJ that can be taught specifically for fighting, for MMA or for combat, and that's the BJJ that I love. That's what I believe is the truest form of BJJ, and that translates to what lads do in the court and what lads need on operations more than anything, in my opinion. Yeah. So for me, I think the best thing that the Royal Marines have done in the last few years is put so much effort and energy into getting the Royal Marines BJJ up there. You've got lads training BJJ at dinner time. That's excellent physical conditioning, excellent mental conditioning, a great challenge for them while they're learning a skill that is practical for their job and they're not getting injured. I don't think you can quite make the same argument for MMA in the military life, if you get what I mean. And yeah, as hard as that is for me to say that as a pro MMA fighter and as a coach, the bootneck in me has to be honest and say that I think BJJ should be a core sport. It is now, and it should be pushed the way it is. And I think every bootneck should be doing BJJ. MMA, like I said earlier about the Royal Marines, is not for everybody, nor should it be. And I think it's a double-edged sword within military lads. Sorry that I banged on a little bit there, didn't I? But...
No, you didn't. It's a great answer, mate. It's hard to answer as well, obviously.
Yeah.
It's the idea of it. I think it'd be pretty cool, but the practicality is of it, like you say, soldiers first, that type of thing, and to be able to train to the level you need to be at to make sure you're ready in all aspects.
And then also is the fact that the time in MMA when lads usually pick up the most injuries is when they're beginners. Because when you put the MMA gloves on, your gum shield and your shin pads on, and you're in a cage and you're sparring and it's full on, until people learn, like learning how to spar is an art in itself, as in learning how to spar and not injure your training partners and just put enough in that it's making the intensity realistic, but not putting too much in that you're going to injure yourself and injure your partner. That can take a long time to learn. And if lads in the core are starting out as a beginner, it might take them 3 or 4 years to learn how to spar properly and all that. And that's the time that they're going to probably pick up most of their injuries, unless they're training at a really good gym. But that's the time when they're going to pick up most of their injuries. And that's also the time that they need to be most injury-free for what they're doing in the core. So it's a very hard tightrope to kind of balance along. Yeah.
I was first introduced to BJJ when I went out to America in 2007, I think it was. Like proper hands-on. Like I knew what the UFC was and all that by then, but it was like we went for an exchange. I was up at FPG at the time, and we did an exchange with like the American version of what we were doing. They were all civilians. They were all ex-military, but they showed us for a full, I think it was like 3 or 4 full days of BJJ, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, I couldn't get over how good it was. And then when I come back, I couldn't find anywhere to go. I couldn't find anywhere to go, but to also do it consistently, because I kept bouncing about the units and, you know, I'd never get a chance to settle. I feel when I got to, when I was at Limston, I went down to the Lion's Den with Kev.
Oh, yeah.
And Dave Matthews,
right?
Yeah, Dave Matthews. So I was going, and it wasn't for a long time. It was probably like, you know, a month or 2 months, just more for the training. But I loved it, absolutely loved it. And I've been a big fan of MMA for a long time. So where do you kind of see, I spoke to someone the other day, a strength and conditioning coach, and I was saying how I believe MMA, the future of it and how it's going to go in terms of, you're seeing much more now, obviously what we're watching in the UFC, Bellator, you're seeing many more guys who are complete all-rounders, and they've got like a complete balance of or they're starting to get a balance of wrestling, of grappling, of striking. And you're not so much a generalist now. You're not so much like he's just a striker and he can do a little bit of BJJ. Where do you think MMA is going in terms of like training, but also how you kind of put it all together?
So let's go back a bit, right? So when UFC came out originally, or MMA came out, should I say? Well, it was the UFC when it first came out, but you know, now it's evolved into MMA. It was a sport where it was one martial art pitted against another. So it was judo against kickboxing, it was boxing against jiu-jitsu, wrestling against taekwondo, or whatever. As the sport developed, people then realised that you needed to know a bit of everything, right? And people took that on, and you had guys like Frank Shamrock, that was like maybe the first, well, I'd say the first true mixed martial artist, where he was probably a decent, maybe not world class in everything, but he was exceptionally good at everything. He was very good at everything. He could grapple with anyone in the world. He could strike with most people in the world. He could wrestle with most people in the world. And then I think as time's gone on, people have took that and they've realised that, like, even in them days, people were like, and it goes back to what I was saying about BJJ, is people were like, I need to learn BJJ to be good at MMA. And yeah, that's true. You need to learn BJJ, but you don't need to learn sport BJJ and playing these different things. That you need to learn true fight BJJ, you know, how to fight. And then I think as time has developed, it's got to the point where, like, to be a fighter nowadays, you've got to have a deep understanding of the fundamentals of all aspects. As in, you've got to understand the fundamentals of wrestling, jiu-jitsu, Thai boxing, you've got to know the distances, the ranges, you've got to know the fundamental techniques, and if you want to call them techniques, that is, that you need in all them aspects. You then need to know the difference between doing them as an individual art and doing them in MMA when the strikes involved. And what I mean, for instance, by that is, again, I'll use jiu-jitsu as the example because it's my biggest love in MMA of martial arts. Jiu-jitsu is my favourite one to train. Is that there is a difference, like in jiu-jitsu, when you're wearing a gi and you've nothing to consider but the grappling, you can sit there and you can play guard, you can spend 20 minutes in guard and just playing with postures and pressures and moving people around. But then what people have realised over the years is when you translate that into MMA, you've still got to have that reality mindset and that what's the word, like, where you're not going to play around and take so much time. You've got to have that intense mindset where there's going to be strikes involved and you're going to be getting elbowed in the face and stuff like that. So people then, they started off as specialists, then they became like generalists, then they realised that even within them general sports, there's still specific aspects that are useful and other aspects that are not. Do you get what I mean? So they went from that to like an evolved version of that. But when you see the world champions and you see the guys that are best in the world, like your Khabib or your John Jones, your Conor McGregors, your Cejudo and things like that, they're still, yes, they're like, they've got that general thing where they're good at everything, they're all rounded and they've got a deep-rooted knowledge of everything, but they've all got one thing, one shiny tool in the box that stands out above everyone else. Like Khabib, it's his ability to take you down, pin you and punch you. He does it like nobody else. He's not just an all-round fighter who's equally good in all areas. He's very good in all areas, but he's got one area that if he can drag you into that area, you are in trouble. John Jones, he's got that one area. Well, he's got two areas. He's got his wrestling and he's got that long reach and he's a fight IQ with his striking. He's kind of got two routes where if he could drag you into one of them routes, you're in trouble. Cejudo, he's very similar to John Jones in the fact that he's got that one route of wrestling that if he grabs hold of you, you're just in a whirlwind for the next 5 minutes where he's tossing you and throwing you around. He's now added this dynamic striking to that, to a level where, yeah, he's all round, generally good at everything, but he's got them two routes that can really mess you up. And I think that's the key. I had this conversation with one of my fighters a couple of days ago, Antonio Sheldon. Ando's like, if Ando gets on your back, he's one of the deadliest guys in the UK. If he takes you down, and if me and Ando are rolling, if he gets my back, I'm more fearful of him getting my back than most black belts I've ever trained with. I know if Ando gets my back, he's got a few techniques that he does when he's got someone's back, and he's done them on me that many times that I think he's took years off my grappling career because he's so tight. I'm like, oh. But he's got that one route that if he can get people down that route, they're dead. He does, he could submit people in the top 10 in the UFC tomorrow if you can get them down and get the back. It doesn't matter. He's world class at it, right?
Yeah.
And what I've been trying to say to him is, there's other aspects of his game that he wants to. I won't say what they are because I don't want people listening. But he's got other aspects of his game that he wants to focus on more and bring up. But the point I was trying to say is, yeah, we need to do that. We need to bring them other levels up because as the whole circle expands, the circle of what you're kind of proficient at, we want that to expand. But we never want to lose sight of we've got that one shiny tool in the box that you can kill any man on the planet with. We don't want that tool to get to the point where it's degraded, where as this area of general skills grow, that one skill comes down and it's just another one in here. As this one grows, we want to still develop this one route that's deadly, if you get what I mean. It's like funneling somebody into an ambush, right? You have your killing group in the middle, then you have your cut-offs at the side. And if you don't get them in that killing group immediately, your cut-offs on the edge might fire them and try and get them and draw them back into that danger area, that killing zone. And once they're in the killing zone, bang, that's your deadly tool again. And that's what I'm trying to think of MMA. Like, yeah, I want everyone to have an ambush set. That's their one kind of route that they've got to victory. But then around that ambush, we've got few auxiliary systems that we can push them back into that one. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Looking, a lot of people kind of they start off their like martial arts career, let's say, either as a striker or a wrestler or whatnot, and then they'll kind of funnel themselves to MMA. And they'll already kind of have that thing you're saying, that killing group, that whatever it might be. If you've got someone who's a complete beginner and they've never done any form of boxing, wrestling, not even played sport or whatever, but they've started MMA, so from the very beginning, would you kind of look at them, how they're developing, and guide them into developing that weapon, their main weapon, or would you kind of like just see how they progress? And what do you normally do with those fights?
So I'll describe to you what how our program works, right? So let's say this guy that you've just described comes to the gym. He's a total beginner. He's never done anything before. He wants to do MMA. First of all, I need to know why he wants to do MMA. Mm-hmm. Does he want to be a fighter? Why does he want to be a fighter? If you want to be a fighter, what's the reasons behind it? Are you doing it for an Instagram post and look cool on a fighter page? Or are you doing it because it's something that's within you? You want to test yourself. You want to challenge yourself. You're someone who loves to live on the edge. Or are you doing it because you want to be a good role model for your kids? Or you're trying to emulate a role model of your own? We need to first understand why he wants to do MMA. And then that can kind of guide us on what route to take. Because everyone's different. If someone who wants to be a world champion, genuinely, everyone says they want to be a world champion. Saying it and being it are two different fucking things, man. Or saying it and meaning it are two different things. Not everyone's going to be it, but meaning it and saying it too. It's the easiest thing to say is, if I speak to someone and I say, why do you want to do MMA? And they go, I want to get to the UFC. I want to go all the way. I think, oh man, that's just a pre-recorded answer.
Yeah.
We've got to understand why they want to do it first, and then we've got different routes to push them down. But first of all, we run an MMA intro program. So in MMA, there's so much to learn. There's the striking aspect, there's the wrestling aspect, there's the grappling aspect, and then there's the how do I put it all together. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we run an intro course which runs for 8 weeks, which is 24 lessons or 24 classes, and on them classes we teach the very fundamental skills that you'll need in MMA. So we'll start off at the basics, stance and footwork. Then we'll move on to like movement in that footwork. Then we'll move, head movement, parries, straight shots, hook shots, low kicks, and we'll bring everything in gradually. Same with the grappling aspect. We'll bring in shrimps, bridging, sprawling, and we'll build them through a fundamental program of all the fundamental. I almost said basic then, but they're not basic skills. They're important skills. Matt Thornton, who's the head of SBG worldwide, he says fundamentals are not what's most basic, they're what's most important, and that's what I believe as well. Fundamentals are not. It's very easy to say the basics. They're not basics. They're important. So that's what the fundamentals. So we show them all the fundamentals of that. Now, when they've come through that, they will have an idea of where they want to go, because they'll have been introduced to a little bit of sparring and stuff like that. So the reason why they joined at the start of that 8 weeks compared to the reason why they want to continue at the end of their 8 weeks may be totally different. So at the start, they might have joined up thinking, I want to be a fighter. 8 weeks later, they might have sparred a few times and they might think, oh, do you know what? I love the training, but this sparring is not for me. I don't want to be a fighter. So then we have different routes we can push them down. We can keep them on like the combat athlete program where they're doing more advanced techniques and drilling, but they're not sparring. They don't have to spar. Unless someone wants to be a fighter, what is the point in them doing 5-minute rounds of sparring every week and going away with all them injuries and all that fatigue and stuff? So we can push them down that route. If they are still of that mindset, yes, I want to be a fighter, the next thing is looking back on that 8-week training period that we've just had and seeing what worked for them, what didn't, what suits their body set, their body type, what suits their game, what do they actually enjoy most, what are they best at. So if, for instance, someone is an absolute killer on the feet and he loves it, I'm not going to turn around to that guy and say, well, you need to work on your ground game more than and just do what,
Yeah.
you're already a good striker. No, I'm going to say to him, right, I want to see you on Paul Webb's Thai boxing classes 2 nights a week, and I want to see you on Oggie's boxing classes. I want you to really sharpen that skill that you love. But at the same time, you're going to have to work on your ground game. So I'd like to see you on 2 BJJ classes, and we'll keep you on the competition team. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And we can kind of make it specific to that person and walks it around for him. The best way that I like to do things for people who are totally beginners and they've done no martial arts before, I like to introduce them through BJJ. I think it's the one that's going to have the most bang for the buck. It's going to give them the most functional skills that they can use straight away. So they can do our BJJ intro course, and straight away they're going to be able to hold their own with 90% of the world in a street fight altercation, and they're going to be able to hold their own with most people on an MMA mat, like most beginners in an MMA mat, in the terms that they know how to grab someone, get hold of them, and control them if they're in a bad position. Whereas if they've never done the BJJ intro course and they're in a point where someone's lighting them up on the feet and they don't know how to get hold of him, control him, take him down, and get a bit of a rest, that can be a very dangerous position to be in when you're in the cage and you've got people, trying to spy you. So personally, I like people to do the BJJ intro course. I like them to finish that, then progress onto the MMA intro course, because the skills transfer over and then the intensity level increases slightly because it's MMA and not BJJ. And then after that, I like them to develop their program. Do I want to be some of them might say, you know what, I tried the MMA intro course, but I really love the BJJ. I'm going to stick with BJJ. And I'm like, brilliant, excellent. We've got another BJJ guy on our team. He's going to be another good training partner. He knows a bit about MMA because he's done it a little bit. And that's like the way I like to push people down the routes.
There's so many aspects to MMA, isn't there? It's unbelievable.
I think that there is no one answer fits all. There is no cookie cutter program. It has to be kind of personalised.
Yeah, and when I've trained a few amateur MMA, obviously S&C coach, and I love training MMA fighters. But my next question is kind of like, because there's so many facets to MMA to learn and to keep on top of, where does your S&C kind of fall in? And for not so much your newbies, but more like your top level amateurs, your professionals, how are they kind of like dispersing their time? Because there's only so many hours in a day, only so many weeks. Your body is getting absolutely battered. Where do you see S&C as, you need to do this, and kind of what's your thoughts on that?
Right. So briefly, I'll answer the question you asked me not to about beginners and stuff. So the ones, when you said not beginners, you're talking about athletes. I'll just briefly touch on beginners for a second though.
Okay.
For me, any beginners that are coming in to do MMA or BJJ or whatever they do, the number one priority is that they enjoy what they're doing. That's the number one priority. So if they come in and I'm as a coach telling them, you've got to do this, that and the other, X, Y, Z, blah, 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 you can't do this, you shouldn't do that, blah, 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 that's going to rob their enjoyment of it and their experience is going to be not as good. So when a beginner comes in, and as they do, they've got tons of questions. What should I be doing for strength and conditioning? What should I be doing this? What should I be doing that? Should I be doing this or that? As a beginner, my advice is simply just do whatever you enjoy as long as it doesn't get you injured. So if you're doing BJJ twice a week and you're doing CrossFit twice a week, if it's getting you a bit fitter and you're enjoying it, keep doing it. Simple as that. You don't need to be doing scientifically proven this or that. It doesn't need. You don't need to be following the new fad training program that all the cool PTs are doing. Yeah. You don't need to be. You just need to be doing something that's safe, that's getting you fit. Doesn't need to be athlete fit. It's just getting you a bit fitter than you were yesterday, and you need to be enjoying it. That's it. As a beginner, just do that.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Crack on. As a fighter, there's a lot of facets that fit into it, like you said, as a professional fighter or as a top end amateur. What I'll say is on the strength and conditioning is do your research on who you're going to get. So I was a PTI in the Marines, then I went on and did the RI's course, which for those that don't know, it gives you quite a high degree of knowledge in physiology and anything to do with the body, basically. It's like the military version of a physio, an exercise-based physio. So I made the mistake of, for quite a few years, programming for myself, doing my own strength and conditioning. And all that ended up was I was burning myself out week in, week out, because it was always, I want to push myself harder and further and faster and more and blah, blah, blah. So I just burned myself out week in, week out. So what I would say is do your research on who you're going to get to coach you. By research, I don't mean ask them what they do. Because if you ask them what they do, they're going to tell you they're the best at what they do. Because what they do, they believe in it. And they should do. You know, otherwise they'd be a hypocrite. But do your own research. Look into what they do. Look into their mindsets and their methods, and see does it align with your mindset and your coach and what your methods are, or what your view on being coached is and stuff like that. Then bear in mind that there's a difference between fitness and conditioning. So like fitness is the things we can measure, like your VO2 max, your strength, your power, your this, your that. Your conditioning is how well you can transfer that to your sport, if that makes sense. And that comes down to a lot of things. The number one thing I'll speak about here is that comes down to you cannot, no matter how fit, how strong, or how powerful you are, you will not be able to transfer that to your sport if you're not recovered in time. If you're constantly fried from training and you're working with a coach that's just goosing you every day, gassing you till your eyeballs bleed every day, you have got zero chance that that's going to benefit you when you in your MMA training, because your nervous system's going to be fucked, your musculoskeletal system's going to be fried, everything's going to be fried, and all that's going to happen is you're going to become a really good CrossFit athlete or a really good strength and conditioning guy, and your MMA skills are going to take a big hit. Yeah. So you need to make sure you've got a coach that understands what it is you're doing in MMA, what the movements, the body, the biomechanics of the stuff that you're doing, the energy systems that you use, the amount of fatigue that you're accruing during your training sessions, the amount of recovery it takes to recover from that fatigue. You need to get a conditioning coach that understands all of that. Without giving a plug here, but I work with Mike Wheatman, and for me, he's excellent. He's a BJJ blue belt. He trains BJJ 4 or 5 days a week. He works with a lot of wrestlers and BJJ guys. He understands the sport. He understands what the movements are, what the energy systems are, what mobility requirements, stuff like that. He understands when to push guys far or when to hold them back. And he understands my next point, which is anything you're doing in the strength and conditioning realm has got to be, it's got to have the aim of improving what you do on the mats. Yep. If you're doing strength and conditioning for the sake of being the strongest, you're not doing. It's got nothing to do with your MMA. I've got nowhere near the strength on a deadlift that some of the guys in my gym have got, and they're not pro athletes. And they might look at me and go, "Well, I can lift twice what he can. He's a pro athlete." But my strength and conditioning is not to get me be the strongest in the gym. It's to get me to do the most functional movements, that buzzword functional, the movements are the things that have got the most carryover transfer to my sport, while not fatiguing me to a level that's going to leave me fucked or fried or whatever, So research your coach, make sure his values are aligned with your values, and make sure he knows a bit about the sport and what you're doing in your strength and conditioning training. You can feel that it's having a direct positive improvement on what you're doing on the mats. If you're feeling tired after it, you're feeling exhausted, and you're getting on the mats, you're crawling on the mats stiff, that's not productive, that's not moving, that's probably holding you back rather than holding you forward.
The only thing I'd find that's about Wheatman, I mean, he was a para. Come on, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it is one thing, and it is a well-known fact that paras don't shower. So before we train together, I do make him take a quick shower, and I lend him my shower gel just in case he hadn't got his own.
I thought he'd just try and get you milling and that's it.
Yeah, well, that's what we do. We do 4 hours of milling twice a week, and that's it. Specific, yeah.
No, it's a good one. You've definitely got a good one there. So yeah, obviously Mike Wheatman was on the podcast. He's on my second one. So yeah, cracking.
Well, I mean, again, so just touching on that, and again, I don't want to make this like a plug for my strength and conditioning coach, but I'm just telling the truth.
I'll just edit it out, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm just telling you a bit about my experience. So it's not a plug or anything like that, but it's just a bit about my experience. But before I started working with Mike, I did exactly that. I looked his Instagram page up. I looked up all the stuff. He was training BJJ. I knew him from around the SBG gyms, and he comes training at the time he was training at my gym. He's been coming over for a while, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever. He trains with us maybe once or twice a week now. But so I knew he knew something about the sport. I looked him up on his Instagram and his website and stuff, and looked at the training he was doing, and not just the training he was doing, but I actually read the way he was doing it and the way he was implementing it and stuff like that. And when I actually got in contact with him about, see, I made this mistake before with people is I've got in contact with strength and conditioning coaches, and I've told them my background was in that I'm a PTI and I was an RI and I've got this strength and conditioning qual and this, that, and the other. And well, I did that wrongly in times because then they kind of looked at me as if I was maybe on the peer group, if you get what I mean, and maybe didn't treat me as an athlete. But basically, I want to turn up to a strength and conditioning coach, and I want him to treat me like I'm a day one beginner idiot who knows nothing, and I want him to say, "This is the plan. This is what you're doing. My job's to coach you. Your job's to execute, and that's it." I don't want it to be where it's a back and forth where I'm giving a bit, yeah, I do this and I know this, and where it becomes me trying to tell them what I already know, because that doesn't benefit me or them. So when I got in contact with Mike Wheatman, I didn't tell him that I was a PTI or that I was an RI or I had strength and conditioning qualifications and stuff. I just told him what I wanted out of the sessions. I wanted to become a better athlete and all that, and I just let him go for it. And then it's worked out really well, because I'm asking him to make me a better athlete. I'm not asking him to know about what I've done in my past or whatever. Yeah. It's irrelevant. So he just gets on with the coaching, the programming, and telling me what to do. I get on with the execution and getting it done. And I feel that's the simplest, most effective way of doing it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's understanding, like, because now, we're not getting on. It's about prolonging your career as long as possible. Yeah. And
well, I'm 37, and the thing is for me is, I'm not, I wasn't born yesterday. I'm not stupid. I know I haven't got a long time left in this sport, and nor do I want a long time in this sport as an athlete competing anymore. Right. I've got a handful of fights left, and I've got a few things that I want to achieve in them fights, but I haven't got another 5 years, 10 years in the sport. I don't want another 5 years or 10 years. I want my training to get me to the level as an athlete that I want, but I want it to give me longevity for when I'm purely focused on coaching and improving. I don't want to finish this as a broken athlete that can't coach. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
As a coach, one of the things I pride myself is always getting on the mats with the lads. And doing. When I'm 50 years old, I want to be able to jump on and do 10 rounds with the lads. If you look at all the SBG coaches all around the world, that ethos is everywhere. There's coaches all over the world in the SBG community, and the late 40s, early 50s, even some of them late 50s, and they still get on the mats and do 10 rounds with the lads 5 nights a week. Mm. Because they understand how to train safely, and the training in a manner that's giving them longevity rather than all intensity. So that's something that I've kind of worked out over the years. It took a long time.
Yeah, and knowing the stuff that Wheats does, part of it is active recovery, isn't it? It's about prolonging the joints, making sure you're nice and healthy.
And that's the bit that as an MMA fighter you don't want to do, because it's the bit that's not very exciting. Hitting pads is exciting, sparring's exciting, grappling's exciting. You know, smashing your time on a wad is exciting. Doing mobility and flexibility, it's not exciting as an MMA fighter. So you need a coach that's going to make it exciting or make it relatable to you, so you understand why you're doing it and you see the benefits, rather than just, we're doing flexibility. You know, you need to understand why you're doing it. And yeah, I think that's a skill that a coach needs.
Yeah, definitely. Just to kind of like take us to the end, like your last fight, or the fight that never was, the fight that never turned up.
Yeah.
Obviously I followed it. I've been chatting to Wheats and seeing how you're getting on throughout camp. And then I messaged him that morning. I said good luck to you and to him. Obviously he's been part of it. And then a couple hours later I'm checking and it's like, oh mate, like how did you deal with that? It's out of your control completely.
Yeah. Well. So again, shameless plug, but I work with a mindset coach called Dave Mullins, who has completely changed my life. He's made me, just working with him, it's allowed me to learn the lessons from the stuff I've done in the past. So I had all this experience in my life that I've done, but I didn't know how to draw them experiences out and as lessons. Do you get what I mean? So working with Dave Mullins has really helped me doing that. One of the first things we worked on was controllables and non-controllables, and only focusing your energy on the things that you can control and not worrying about the things that you can't, because what's the fucking point? You can't control them. What's the point in wasting energy? So when my opponent pulled out on the day of the fight, about 4 hours before the fight, the first thing that's going through my mind is obviously all the training that I've gone through is wasted. I've trained my bollocks off for this, and this guy's pulling out and blah blah blah. Then you start to think about, shit, what about all my supporters that have bought tickets and they're coming to the fight? I had bootnecks driving from all over the country. Jules Marin drove from London to come up. Jules Marin flew to California to watch me fight. Do you know what I mean? And he drives every fight I'm at, wherever it is in the world, Jules is there. And I've got a load of bootneck mates that are the same. Ant Middleton was on his way up. Greg was on his way up. Glyn was on his way up. Mate, all that pressure's hitting me now, thinking, all my mates that are on the way up here to watch me fight, and now I'm letting them. I felt like I was letting them down. Yeah. For the first hour or so, or a couple of hours, that's what was going through my mind. You know, that's what was going. You know, and then it's when I started to draw the lessons out and hang about. Wait a minute. What is it I'm always telling people? Don't focus on the non-controllables. This isn't my fault. I've got any control over this. This is someone else's fault. Whether it's a fault or whether it's just a mishap, who cares? It's happened. Deal with it. I can't control it. Let's just focus on the things I could control. So then after about an hour or two, I just got a grip of myself. I think you're allowed an hour or two sulking when you had a training camp like that, you know. So after an hour or two, I just got my shit together, and I just started focusing on the things I can control, like got to the fight show, got upstairs with all the lads, got in the locker room and started helping the other lads warm up, so being there for my teammates. And then I started to get out and about in the crowd, in the thing, because there was about 3,000, 4,000 people there. So I just started to get out and about and see all my supporters and all that, and chat to them. Because I thought, one thing I can control is actually going communicating with my supporters rather than hiding away in the changing rooms all night. I can go and speak to my mates and the people that have come to see me. So I did that, and it made me feel a lot better, because they were obviously supportive and saying, well, it's not your fault. And that made me feel a lot better then. And then by the time the night was over, us as a group, as SBG UK, we'd had a good night. We had a lot of successful fights. One of my fighters, Carrie Sturrick, he had a great performance. He ultimately lost the fight because he got caught in a choke, but it was his 18-year-old. It was his pro debut on Cage Warriors, which is a huge amount of pressure. Huge amount of pressure. In Manchester, the first Cage Warriors Manchester, and he got to put his pro debut on there. And even though we lost the fight, it was a successful fight for him, because he showed what skills he's got, and there's a lot of lessons that he can learn for that going forward. So it was a successful night all in all. So then obviously moving forward from that, it was just, I'm over it now, let's move forward. That was the mindset going forward.
one thing I've kind of like started to learn the more I'm getting into like stoicism and this type of stuff is, and it's similar to what you just said, but when I first heard of it and when I was first listening, I was thinking it's called the art of surrender and getting good at surrendering. And to a bootneck, to a fighter, you don't surrender, but learning about just surrendering to the things that you have no control over and just realizing that, then let it go. And then you did exactly that. And then what can you control? Okay, bang, I'm going to go out, I'm going to see my mates, blah, blah, blah.
So the first kind of experience I had of stoicism was reading a tattoo on one of my best friends' back, Ian Butlin, who's also he's a legend of UK MMA. For those that don't know him, look him up. Ian M16 Butlin. He's one of the first UK MMA fighters. He's one of the first guys to start a gym. He does all the broadcasts for like M1 Global and stuff like that. He's a legend. Anyway, he's got a tattoo on his back and it says, "He who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave." Yeah. And when I first read that, I seen it on his back and I was a young lad and I'm thinking, what the fuck's that all about? He who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave. But see, it's that bullshit. You know, I was in the Marines.
Yeah.
And it just stuck in my mind and I kept trying to work out what he was on about with it. And I was thinking, what is that? You know, every time I see this tattoo, what is that tattoo about? And it took me a while to get onto it. And then I got onto the fact that it's what you're talking about. It's the surrendering to the things you have no control over. And, he's just making the point that if you're going to die at some point, accept it, surrender to it, get over it. And then it gives you the freedom to go and know that the rest of your life, you should be out there enjoying. Because if you're not, you're living a lie.
Yeah.
And that was my first experience of stoicism.
That's no, it's good. The more I get into it, the more I realize like how it kind of resonates with, I think, people from our backgrounds and especially the military and just how I wish I found it earlier, really.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
One of them though, but don't worry about it. Just keep learning about the new stuff and
exactly.
And cracking on.
Stapes,
mate, I just want to wrap it up, mate, and just thank you for your time. It's been
absolutely. Mate, thank you for the show.
Been a pleasure having you on, mate. And just so if anybody doesn't know where to find you, what's your kind of Instagram handle and where can they
so on Instagram, I'm Stapes_50cal.
Yeah.
Or Stapes50cal, something like that. You'll put Stapes50, you'll find it. And then my gym is SBG Rochdale. If you want to look up SBG Rochdale and see what we do at training or anything like that, look us up. We've actually got a new website launching in the next week or so. So that's going to be sbgrochdale.co.uk. If anyone wants to have a look at that, it's going to be a pretty cool website. And it's made by one of our team members, Mav, blue belt in Jits. He's actually developing the site for us. Like everything we do at SBG, it's always one of the tribe members helping us out do it. And I don't even have to ask. It's just the fact he messaged me and says, "Bro, do you need help with this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do. Thank you." But that's what we're all about. So have a look at the website as well, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll link them onto the description below. But I might give you a shout for your website developer because we need a new one for the gym. So
hey, I don't want to throw his name in that. He's not actually a website developer. He's a tattoo artist. It's just that he's just really good at it, really, really artistically, and he's got such an imaginative mind that he's making a cool website for us. So I don't want to get him in the shit there, but yeah.
All right, class, mate. I wish you all the best. Obviously, when we start back out of lockdown and the future of your fighters and obviously yourself, the rest of your career, mate. Good luck with it all, and I'll stay in touch.
Same goes, man. Thank you very much. Thanks for the call. I've enjoyed it.
No worries, mate. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.